Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Rick Fussell and this is the Ingrain Workshop. In part one, we built the foundation for the ultimate outfeed table, and today we're taking it to the next level. We're going to be adding some flooring, some exterior and interior dividers. We're going to be building some drawer boxes and installing some undermount drawer slides, making this table not only a work surface but a storage powerhouse. So grab a cup of coffee, tell the supervisor you're going to be busy for a while, and let's get to work. Alright, we're starting at the table saw. I'm using 3/4 inch birch plywood pre-finished on one side to make two pieces measuring 29¼ inches by 31½ inches. These will serve as exterior dividers on the front of the table. A couple of clean, accurate cuts here will set the foundation for the next steps, so let's get to it. Like I mentioned in part one, Golden Pecan would be making an appearance. I just didn't think it would be this fast. I'm applying a pre-stain conditioner first, followed by the Golden Pecan stain, which will contrast nicely with the special walnut I used on the base. And just like Mr. Miyagi's dojo, here at the Ingrain Dojo, we wax on and wax off. Got to keep that discipline strong. With the stain dry, I'm using some F-clamps to hold the divider in place while I pre-drill and drive in some 1 3/4 inch GRK screws to lock it down. As you can see, the Golden Pecan and Special Walnut play well together. No drama, just the way we like it. With the right divider installed, I'll simply repeat the process for the left one, easy, clean, and solid. Using my DIY track saw guide, I'm breaking down a sheet of 3/4 inch birch plywood. Then over at the table saw, I'll cut two pieces to 22 3/4 inches by 31½ inches. These will be the final exterior dividers. One will go in the back of the table and the other will be installed on the right side. Nice and precise, just the way we want it. For the exterior divider on the right side, I had to cut out a notch at the top to fit around one of the horizontal supports on the base. A quick pass with the oscillating tool took care of that. Then I took both panels over to my old Outfeed table for some sanding and of course a little swearing. And when you know it, Mr. Miyagi must have found a few more cars because I was right back to waxing on and waxing off. I'll install these two exterior dividers just like the front ones, using F-clamps to hold them in place, then pre-drilling and driving in some 1 3/4 inch GRK screws. And with that, all the exterior dividers are locked in place, solid and secure. Now it's time to shift gears and focus on the interior. Back at the table saw, I'm cutting two pieces of 3/4 inch birch plywood down to 55½ inches by 31½ inches. With the pre-finished side facing the interior of the table, I'll fasten these to the middle, upper, and lower horizontal supports, pre-drilling and securing them with 1 3/4 inch GRK screws. This will add some serious structure and keep everything rock solid. Next, because of the exterior dividers I installed on the back and right side of the base, I need to add a 3/4 inch filler. This way I won't have to notch out the floor later. Using some tight bond glue, I'll install a filler piece right where the exterior divider ends and run it out to the edge of the base. I'll temporarily secure it with brad nails, then lock it down by screwing it into the bottom stretcher. Using some scrap material, I cut 3/4 inch by 1½ inch cleats and ran them around the internal perimeter of the base. With the middle dividers installed, the table is now split into two sections, front and back. And as I install the cleats, you can see exactly why those 3/4 inch filler pieces were necessary. This way, I won't have to notch out the floor panels. They'll just drop straight in and fasten to the cleats, nice and easy. To fasten the cleats, I'm using a scrap piece of plywood to position them so the floor will be flush with the top of the stretcher, securing them with brad nails. Now these will be for the drawer compartments, and while the bottom is optional, I want to keep the sawdust out of the drawers. On the other side of the table, I'll have a cabinet compartment, and in that area, I'll be screwing the cleats directly to the stretchers for added strength. Solid construction is key. With the bottoms cut at 58½ inches by 31½ inches, I can drop them straight in, and with a little persuasion from Thor's hammer, they fit like a glove. After all, if it doesn't fit, you must have quit, just like Johnny Cochran in a courtroom drama, and you know we don't like drama here. Now I'll just tack the floor in place with some 1.5" brad nails, and we're one step closer to drawer perfection. Back at the table saw, I'm cutting 3 interior dividers. One will separate the drawer and cabinet compartments at the front of the table, while the other two will divide the large and small drawer compartments in the back. The height is the same for all, 28¼ inches, but the widths come in at 31½, 32¼ and 34¼ inches respectively. And yes, I said respectfully, because even dividers deserve a little respect. Two of the dividers needed notches for the upper horizontal support, so I grabbed the oscillating tool and used a scrap plywood backer to keep tear out at bay. I didn't show it, but I also drilled pocket holes in the bottom and sides to secure them to the base. For installation, I used some scrap pieces as positive stops to get everything positioned accurately. And most importantly, plumb, because if it ain't plumb, well, let's just say the supervisor would not be happy about that. Now it's time to start cutting out the drawer boxes from some 5/8 inch birch pre-finished plywood. Since I'm making 3 drawers per compartment, all my drawer box heights will be the same. Now I won't go into detail on how to size your drawer boxes, that's all a separate video, which I'll definitely cover in the future. But for today, I'm making them all 7 5/16 strong. With my fence set at the table saw, I can start ripping the pieces for a total of 12 drawers. Once I've got all the pieces at the right height, I'll jump over to the miter saw and start cutting the drawer widths for the fronts and backs and the depths for the sides. All the sides are cut to 24 inches since I'll be using 24-inch undermount drawer slides. And no, before you ask, they're not Bloom. They're some good old-fashioned Chinese knockoffs. But hey, I'll drop a link in the description below if you want to grab some. And spoiler alert, I'm an undermount drawer slide virgin. Not sure if I can say that on the internet.
Right.
But we'll see how easy these things are to install. Now I've got 3 different drawer widths. The small ones are 6 3/8 inch, the medium ones are 29 7/8 inch, and the large ones come in at 31 7/8 inches. So I'll cut the fronts and backs to those dimensions here at the miter saw. With all the sides, fronts, and backs cut, I can head back to the table saw to cut the drawer bottoms from 1/2 inch pre-finished birch plywood. And if you've been paying attention, you've probably noticed that every time I have to rip a full sheet of plywood, I have to open my overhead door. That's actually by design. If you have a small workshop, placing your table saw near a garage or overhead door gives you more space to work with. Realistically, how often are you ripping full sheets of plywood? This setup lets my table saw just sit 6 feet from the wall, whereas I'd need at least 10 feet of clearance otherwise. Next, I'll cross-cut the bottoms. The cuts are too long for the miter saw, so I just used my cart as a support table and took it slow. And with all the bottoms cut, as you can see, my cart runneth over with drawer box parts. With a 1/2 inch dado stack set up in my table saw, I'm raising the blade to 1/4 inch and setting my fence a 1/2 inch from the blade. This is how I'm cutting the groove in the fronts, backs, and sides to accept the 1/2 inch drawer bottoms. Quick tip, if you're using undermount drawer slides, this groove has to be exactly a 1/2 inch up from the bottom of the drawer box. Before I go all in, I'm making a test cut on a scrap piece to check the fit, because I don't want it too loose and I don't want it too tight. Just like Goldilocks, it's got to be just right. Once I've got it dialed in, it's time for the repetitive process of cutting grooves in all the drawer box pieces. Now you could do this without a dado stack by making multiple passes with a standard table saw blade. But for a 1/2 inch groove, that would take probably 5 passes instead of just 1, and let's be real, who has the time for that? And since my ADD kicked in, let's go ahead and do the quick math on that. We're looking at 4 pieces per drawer times 12 drawers times 5 passes. That's a total of 240 passes doing it with just a saw blade, but not today, my friends. The last thing I need to do is cut off the groove from the back of the drawer boxes. Like I said before, we don't like drama, and leaving the groove on the back of the drawer box, that's definitely drama, especially when you're dealing with undermount drawer slides. Now technically, you could cut 2 openings in the back of the drawer box to allow the bottom to sit directly on top of the slides, but I find it way easier to just cut the entire groove off the back. No fussy cutouts, no extra measuring, just a clean, smooth back panel that makes installing the drawer bottoms a whole lot simpler. Work smarter, not harder. Finally, it's time to assemble these drawer boxes. I'll run a bead of glue at the joints and tack them together with 1.5 inch brad nails. I start with the front and one side, kind of like setting up a good foundation for a house, except this one holds tools instead of people. Next, I'll apply some glue into the groove and slide in the drawer bottom. Once that's in place, I can install the other side and then the back. Now, since we cut the groove off the back, I'll run a bead of glue along the bottom edge and tack it in place with some brad nails, just a temporary hold. Of course, we're not just eyeballing this. I check my diagonals to make sure everything is square. Then to lock it in, I drive some screws through the bottom into the back panel. And just like that, 1 down, 11 more to go. Good thing I enjoy the sound of a brad nailer and the smell of fresh napalm in the morning. With the drawer boxes assembled, it's time to install the undermount drawer slides. Now, I'm not diving deep into how I determine the exact placement. That's for a future, more in-depth video. But my first drawer slide location is 17 and 23/32 inches from the bottom because nice round numbers are way overrated. To make installation easier, I cut a spacer from some scrap plywood. Since my drawer fronts will be inset, I also had to make a jig that offsets my drawer slides exactly 1 3/4 inches from the stretcher. With my jig and spacer in place, I can set the drawer slide in position and use a self-centering drill bit to pre-drill 3 hole locations before securing the slide with screws. Once one side is locked in, I just flip everything around and repeat the process on the other side. And just like that, we're one step closer to seeing if these off-brand undermount slides actually live up to the hype, or if I'm about to regret my life choices. Next up, I'll install the middle slide using the same process, only this time I'm swapping out my spacer for an 8 7/8 inch version. Same jig, same method, just a different height. And as for the bottom slide, well, that one's easy. No spacer needed. It just sits right on the bottom like it owns the place. Honestly, after all the precise measuring and jig making, I'll take an easy win where I can get one. Now, to attach the back of the drawer box to the slide, I need to mark the stud hole locations. I've seen some fancy jigs out there for this, but honestly, I found a much simpler method. Just place the drawer on the slide, push it all the way back, and give it a couple of bumps. Kind of like knocking on a door to see if anyone's home. This leaves nice little dimples on the back of the drawer box, showing me exactly where to drill. From there, I'll drill a 1/4 inch hole a 1/2 inch deep to accept the stud on the back of the drawer slide. Now that the drawers are coming together, it's time for a little finishing touch. I've got an 1/8 inch roundover bit chucked up in my trim router, and I'm just running it around the perimeter to soften the edges because sharp plywood edges and knuckles don't get along. Then with a 120 grit sanding sponge, I'll smooth out all the edges. Nothing fancy, just making sure everything feels nice to the touch. The last thing to install is these drawer slide mounts on the bottom of the drawer box. Now, one of the reasons I picked these, aside from the price, because that's just how I roll, is the adjustability. These things have 3 fine-tuning knobs that let you move the drawer face in and out, up and down, and left to right. Basically, they take all the stress out of getting that perfect fit. To install them, I'll use a self-centering drill bit to pre-drill, then secure each mount with 3 screws. They go in the front corners of the drawer box, and let me tell you, these things are a breeze to install. Almost makes me wonder why I didn't switch to undermount slides sooner. Almost. Now, installing the drawers is about as easy as it gets. Just set them on the rails, slide them all the way in, and boom, you're done. No drama, no fuss, just satisfaction, unlike the Rolling Stones. And of course, what's a proper drawer install without a classic slow-motion closing monologue? I mean, at this point, it's basically a rite of passage for YouTube woodworkers. Maybe it's a tutorial. Maybe it's a high-fashion runway show. Either way, enjoy the beauty of these drawers gliding home like they were meant to be there all along. Well, that's going to be a wrap for part 2 of the Ultimate Outfeed Table. This thing's really coming together nice, and I can't wait to put it to work. Now, if you found this video helpful, entertaining, maybe slightly amusing, then hit that like button and subscribe. And in the comments section, let me know what features you might add to this table. You can support this channel by using the affiliate links below, or if you're really feeling generous, you can leave us a special thanks. Stay tuned for part 3 because it's going to be a good one. Keep your saw blades sharp and your fingers out of the way. I'm Rick with the Ingrain Workshop. Until next time, have a wonderful day and God bless.